Each recorded action speaks volumes. Every close observation uncovers facts. Protecting your civil rights, revealing definitive justice.
All right, let's go. Open that bag and hand over your ID.
Afternoon, officer. Why would I need to do that?
You fit the description. I said open it.
Sitting in a park isn't a crime. I've done nothing wrong.
Don't start with me. You want to make this harder?
I'm calm, and I know my rights. You don't have cause to search my bag.
Officer Brian Trent thought he owned every block in his district, including the park. He spotted a black man sitting quietly near the fountain, and something about that bothered him. He walked over, chest out, and started making demands that had no legal ground to stand on. Threatening arrest, threatening jail, threatening consequences. What he didn't know was that the man he was threatening had more federal authority in his back pocket than Trent had accumulated in 15 years on the force. Before we go any further, comment where in the world you are watching from, and make sure to subscribe, because tomorrow's story is one you don't want to miss. Marcus Webb was 41 years old, and he had spent the last 14 years doing work that most people would never know about. He was a senior undercover agent with the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, and he was very good at his job. He had worked cases in 3 different states, helped bring down 2 major drug networks, and had been commended by his supervisors more than once for his ability to blend into any environment without raising suspicion. That was the whole point of undercover work. You had to look like you belonged everywhere, even when the world kept telling you that you didn't. On this particular Thursday afternoon, Marcus was sitting on a wooden bench near the fountain in Callaway Park, wearing a plain gray hoodie, dark jeans, and worn sneakers. There was a black duffel bag resting beside his left foot. To anyone walking by, he looked like a regular man taking a break from the day. That was exactly how it was supposed to look. Marcus had been running a 7-month undercover operation, targeting a mid-level drug distribution network that used Callaway Park as one of its key handoff points. He wasn't relaxing. He was working. His eyes were calm, but his attention was everywhere. On the paths, the benches, the people moving through the park. He was waiting for a contact to show up, and the timing had to be perfect. Everything was in position. The operation was days away from its biggest breakthrough. He noticed the officer before the officer reached him. That was also part of the training. Brian Trent had been with the Maplewood Police Department for 15 years, and in that time, he had built a reputation that made other officers uncomfortable. He had been the subject of 4 internal complaints in the last 3 years alone. 3 of them filed by black men who said Trent had stopped them without cause, spoken to them with contempt, and treated public spaces like they were restricted areas that required his personal approval to enter. None of those complaints had resulted in any serious discipline. Trent had kept his badge each time, and somewhere along the way, that had taught him that there were no real consequences for the way he operated. He walked through Callaway Park that afternoon the same way he always did, like a man who had never once been told he was wrong. He spotted Marcus from about 30 feet away, a black man, alone, a bag at his feet. Trent's eyes locked on and didn't let go. He changed his direction without hesitation and started walking toward the bench with the kind of deliberate pace that was meant to feel like pressure before a single word was spoken. Marcus kept his eyes forward. He didn't turn his head. He didn't shift in his seat. He just waited. The way he had learned to wait in situations that required absolute control. Trent stopped directly in front of him, close enough to cast a shadow across Marcus's shoes. He didn't introduce himself. He didn't start with a question. He looked down at the duffel bag first, then back up at Marcus and said, "What's in the bag?" Marcus looked up slowly. "Nothing that concerns you," he said. His voice was even. No aggression, no nervousness. Just flat and steady. That answer visibly irritated Trent. His jaw tightened. "Everything in this park concerns me," he said. "ID, now." Marcus didn't reach for anything. He held Trent's gaze and said calmly, "You haven't given me a reason." The two men stared at each other for a moment that felt longer than it was. Around them, the park continued its afternoon routine. A woman pushed a stroller along the path. Two kids chased each other near the grass. An old man read a newspaper on a bench across the fountain. Nobody had noticed yet, but the air between Marcus and Trent had already shifted into something tense and uneven, and it was only going to get worse from here. Trent took one step closer to the bench, not because he had a reason to, but because closing the distance was how he reminded people who had the power in the conversation. He looked down at Marcus the way a man looks at something he has already decided is a problem, and he said, "You want to do this the hard way, that's fine by me. I've got all afternoon." Marcus didn't move. He didn't lean back, didn't look away, didn't do any of the things that people do when they're trying to shrink themselves to make someone else more comfortable. He just sat there, both feet flat on the ground, hands resting on his knees, watching Trent with an expression that gave nothing away. That stillness was not something Trent was used to. Most people, when he pressed them, either got loud or got nervous. Marcus Webb did neither, and that bothered Trent more than he wanted to show. "Last time I'm asking," Trent said, his voice dropping lower now, the kind of low that was meant to sound like a final warning. "ID out, bag open, or we're going to the station and you can explain yourself there." Marcus tilted his head slightly. "On what grounds?" he asked. The question was not a challenge. It was calm and direct, the way a man asks something when he already knows the answer and simply wants to see if the other person does too. Trent's face hardened. "Suspicious behavior," he said. "You've been sitting here for over an hour. You've got a bag you won't open. That's enough for me." "Sitting in a public park is not suspicious behavior," Marcus said quietly. That was when Trent reached for his radio. He called it in as a non-compliant individual, which was the kind of language that turned a conversation into something official, something on record, something that gave whatever came next a paper trail that would make it look justified. Within 4 minutes, a second patrol car pulled up along the park's east entrance. Officer Gary Simmons stepped out, a younger man who clearly read the situation the moment he saw Trent's posture and Marcus's composure. Simmons looked slightly uncertain, but he fell in line the way junior officers often do, when they don't yet have the confidence to question a senior colleague in the field. Now, there were two officers standing in front of the bench. A woman walking a dog slowed down nearby. She didn't stop completely, but she didn't keep moving either. A teenage boy sitting on the grass about 20 feet away had already pulled out his phone and was holding it at an angle that suggested he was recording without making it obvious. Marcus clocked both of them without turning his head. Trent pointed at the duffel bag. "Open it," he said. "Right now." Marcus's jaw tightened, not from fear, but from the specific kind of frustration that comes from knowing exactly what is happening to you, and knowing that losing your composure will only make it worse. He had been in this position before, not as an undercover agent, as a black man, and the two experiences were not as different as people like to think. He breathed once, slow and controlled, and said, "I am not opening that bag without probable cause. That is my right." Trent turned to Simmons. "You see what I'm dealing with?" he said, as if Marcus wasn't sitting right there. As if he had already stopped being a person in the conversation and become a situation to be handled. Simmons didn't respond. He looked at Marcus, and something in his expression flickered. A brief, almost invisible moment of discomfort. But he stayed where he was. Trent turned back to Marcus and said, "Stand up. You're being detained." Marcus looked at him steadily. "You're making a mistake," he said. His voice was still calm, still even. But there was something behind those words that wasn't a threat and wasn't a plea. It was a statement delivered by someone who knew exactly what was coming next and was giving the other man one final opportunity to change course. Trent didn't take it. He reached out and grabbed Marcus by the arm. And that was the moment everything changed. Because at the exact second Trent's hand made contact, three things happened simultaneously. A black SUV rolled slowly through the park's north entrance. A second one came in from the west, and a third stopped at the south path, engine running. Their windows were tinted, their plates were federal, and the men stepping out of them were not wearing patrol uniforms. The doors of all three SUVs opened at the same time. 8 men stepped out, moving with the kind of calm, coordinated purpose that doesn't come from local precincts. It comes from federal training. They wore dark tactical vests with 4 bold yellow letters across the chest. DEA. They fanned out across the park's entrances without rushing, without shouting, without any of the chaos that Trent had been creating over the last several minutes. They simply moved into position the way people do when they have been planning something for a very long time and everything is finally going exactly as it should. Trent froze. His hand was still on Marcus's arm, but the grip had gone loose without him realizing it. He looked at the vehicles, then at the agents, then back at the vehicles. His mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. The lead agent, a tall woman named Special Agent Diane Crawley, walked directly toward the bench. She didn't look at Trent when she approached. She looked at Marcus, and the corner of her mouth lifted just slightly. She reached into her vest, pulled out a badge holder and a holstered weapon, and held them out toward him. Marcus stood up from the bench, took his badge and his weapon, and clipped them both into place without a word. Crawley finally turned to look at Trent. "You just grabbed a senior DEA undercover agent in the middle of an active federal operation," she said. Her voice was not raised. It didn't need to be. "A operation," she continued, "that your department was never cleared to know about." Trent's face had gone the color of old chalk. He looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and what he saw was no longer the man he thought he had the authority to push around. Standing in front of him now was Agent Marcus Webb, 14 years with the DEA, badge on his hip, and an expression that was neither angry nor satisfied. Just tired. The way a man looks when something has happened to him so many times that even being proven right doesn't feel like a victory anymore. The teenage boy's phone was still recording. The woman with the dog had stopped walking entirely. The park was silent, except for the sound of federal agents doing the job that Brian Trent had just nearly destroyed. By sundown, the video was everywhere. The teenage boy's footage had been uploaded within 20 minutes of the incident, and it spread the way things spread when they carry the kind of truth that people recognize immediately. The clip showed everything. Trent's aggression, Marcus's composure, the federal vehicles rolling in, and the moment Special Agent Crawley handed Marcus back his badge. It had been viewed over 2 million times before midnight, and by the next morning, the Maplewood Police Department was fielding calls from 3 different news stations and a federal oversight office. The DEA released a formal statement confirming that Agent Marcus Webb had been conducting an active undercover operation in Callaway Park as part of a 7-month federal investigation. The statement did not use soft language. It said directly that Officer Brian Trent's intervention had endangered a federal agent, disrupted an active operation, and shown a clear pattern of behavior consistent with racial bias in the field. The word pattern was important because it pointed backward to the 4 complaints that had gone nowhere, to the 3 black men who had filed reports and been ignored, to every moment the department had looked the other way and called it a judgment call. Internal Affairs opened a formal investigation before the end of the business day. By the following morning, Officer Brian Trent was suspended without pay, pending a full disciplinary review. His badge and his weapon were collected. His access to the precinct was revoked. Officer Simmons was placed under a separate review for his role in the detainment. Marcus gave a single brief statement when asked by a reporter outside the federal building that evening. He didn't talk about Trent. He didn't talk about the operation. He said only this, that what happened to him in that park had happened to him before, in other parks, on other streets, in other cities, long before he ever carried a federal badge, and that the badge had not protected him. His own restraint had. He picked up his coffee, turned toward the building entrance, and walked inside. Some cases close with an arrest, some close with a verdict. This one closed with a suspension, a viral video, and a federal complaint that nobody in the Maplewood Police Department was going to make disappear. Brian Trent finally had consequences. It just took a DEA badge to make them real.
Upholding justice is a vital pursuit, and understanding acts as your armor. Thank you for joining us and demanding transparency.